Hi, my name's Laura Reining and I work as a music therapist. So I work with young adults affected severely by autism and adolescents that are in the care system who suffer with various mental health illness. So in particular, depression, social anxiety disorder and bipolar disorder. So for those of you who don't know, I'll first of all just briefly say what music therapy is. Music therapy is where improvised music is spontaneously co-created between the therapist and client and used as a powerful tool for expression. So it's particularly beneficial for those clients I work with who are non-verbal, who actually are unable to communicate verbally. I believe music is a universal language. It's an incredibly powerful medium and an emotive medium that can affect us on a profound level. So through this improvised music, it enables individuals to work through, to process, to express any difficult, painful emotions, or to work through any traumatic experiences that they may have had that they just feel they are unable to articulate or to put into words. But really, today I wanted to put forward a message to my friends who I love dearly, and to any of my friends who are suffering with a mental illness, and also to all of you out there who are suffering a mental illness, and perhaps many of you are actually suffering in silence. This is a subject that is very close to my heart, having had personal experience of clinical depression. And I feel very strongly that so much more needs to be done to create awareness about mental health issues, as sadly it is still very much discriminated against and deemed a taboo subject. And really it shouldn't be, because actually if you look at the frightening statistics, 1 in 3 people now in the UK are suffering with a mental illness, mainly depression and anxiety. And what's even more disturbing is that the biggest killer amongst men under the age of 45 in the UK is suicide caused by depression. So I cannot emphasise enough the importance of speaking out about mental illness. And I think this is one of the major contributing factors, particularly to male suicide, is the fact that we're sort of conditioned, particularly men, are conditioned that it's a sign of weakness to express and to talk about how they're feeling. And historically, that really was the case, that it was seen as a sign of weakness. But really, I believe that it's actually the opposite. I think it requires immense internal strength and courage to take ownership of your feelings and to be honest about how you're feeling. And this is how we're going to be able to overcome mental illness, particularly depression, is by talking about it and gaining the support that people really deserve. I myself battled severe depression for a good 4 years, but I think it was something that had always been there, that I perhaps had suffered with for most of my life, but I didn't know enough about depression at the time to be able to acknowledge that that's what I was experiencing. But I think it had always been lurking beneath the surface. And like so many other outgoing, extroverted people, you tend to present to the world this sort of bubbly persona, this larger than life character, as a defence mechanism to hide the underlying depression and the underlying pain that you're actually experiencing. And I think that's quite common amongst extroverted people. They often do tend to suffer with a lot of anxiety that they disguise very well with their sort of theatrical presentation. You've only got to look at all the actors and artists out there, musicians, that often ensue this alter ego, and you find that actually internally they're some of the most hypersensitive souls who have a significant amount of internal torment going on that they disguise very well, actually. But anyway, just to say a little bit, in detail about depression as an illness. It's a lot of people don't realise there's actually 8 different types of depression. So it's an incredibly complex illness, and often people don't realise that it's not actually just a mental illness either. It also has many physical symptoms, many physical manifestations. So, for example, from my own experience, I remember vividly becoming hypersensitive to light. It literally, just normal daylight, it felt as if it was burning my eyes. I just wanted to crawl into a darkened room and block the whole world out. It was just too much to even be outside, which, looking back, it just seems absolutely ridiculous. You also often, not everybody, because of course it depends on the individual, but for a lot of people, they often experience sensitivity to sound as well. Everything is just too much, just everyday noises, just the sound of cars, people chatting, laughter, any everyday noise you can think of, just going to the supermarket and the almighty noise, all the different sounds that you have to take in, even that is just a massive overload. It's too much. And I never forget something that Ruby Wax, the amazing American comedian, I think she's a remarkable woman. She herself has battled with severe depression. She mentions in her amazing book, actually, that I recommend to anyone to read, Sane New World, her autobiographical book that gives great insight into her own journey through battling and overcoming depression. But anyway, in the book, it's sort of stuck in my mind that she gives a really good analogy of what depression is. And she says that if you imagine you've got a PC, you've got your computer, and you've got all these windows open on your computer, and eventually it crashes. She says that that's similar to the human mind. We forget just how fragile our own brain is, the human brain is. And it's the same sort of thing. Your mind becomes overloaded with relentless negative thought processes, just external stimulus. Everything just becomes too much. Sound, light, and consequently you shut down. Your brain, your mind shuts down. And what I also experienced at the most severe point in my depression was I had shut down to such an extent that I couldn't even do normal sort of simple things like just reading a book. I couldn't do it because you lose your concentration. You cannot concentrate on anything. You cannot listen. Your listening skills go out the window. You can't even function reading. It's just too much. It's an overload of the senses. So just things, simple everyday things that we take for granted, like having a conversation with your friend or a family member, it becomes really difficult because as I say, your brain shuts down and it's too much to take in, just simple stimulus. I yeah, I even remember, I mean, it sounds so severe looking back, but I even remember just speaking to friends on the phone, or even my own mum, just speaking on the phone felt impossible. And I used to permanently have my phone on silent because I just couldn't deal with the outside world at all. I felt that miserable. And even just hearing the phone ringing just triggered such anxiety within me. I couldn't bear it, and consequently just pushed everyone away. Couldn't even answer the phone. And I think that is very common in a lot of cases of depression, where you literally want to crawl into a hole and for the world to swallow you up. And that's the worst thing about depression, is that by the very nature of it, you push those, particularly those that you love the most, away. You don't want to engage or to interact with anybody because you lose all joy in your life. And even things that ordinarily would cheer you up, like going for a drink with your friends, having dinner with your friends, or just doing any normal social thing with your mates, becomes impossible as well, because you feel so low that even just human interaction is too much. You cannot physically bear it. And really and truly, what can be worse than that? An illness where you feel such, I call it literally a well of sadness. What could be worse than feeling so miserable on a relentless daily basis, and living a life with absolutely no joy in it whatsoever, not even being able to have simple pleasures or to receive simple gratification from anything? Well, you're not having a life, are you? I mean, what could be worse? And consequently, at its worst, depression makes someone feel so unworthy. It crushes your self-esteem to such an extent, and you are riddled with so much self-loathing that you just want, you can't see any other way other than being dead. That is basically what you want. You just want to die. And it's horrendous. It really. And I am so grateful that just in the last 18 months I have made a miraculous recovery. And that's not to say it's gone away completely. I suffer with depression mildly now, but I think it's something that never really fully goes away. But it's a massive improvement from when I look back, to 2 years ago, when I was, just a shell actually of my former self. I was, in absolute honesty, I was bedridden. I lost my job. I lost my zest for life. I've always had such a zest for life, and that just diminished. It was eradicated. It was destroyed. And at the time, you really feel like you're never going to get past that. So to those of you who are currently going through, this awful darkness, I know, I really do, feel for you, and I know that it feels that you're never going to get over it. But as hard as it is, with the right support and the right just emotional understanding, you will get there. And even if you don't have that, I believe that depression will run its natural course, and you will eventually, nothing lasts forever. You will eventually get out of it. But that's the other, really sad thing about depression, is the fact that by its very nature, you don't want to talk to anyone. And I know I'm sitting here saying, we have to, the only way to overcome it is you have to open up and talk about your feelings. But this is what's so unfair about the whole thing, is that when you are in the midst of that darkness, you don't want to talk to anyone. As I said, I couldn't even answer the phone to my own mother, let alone speak to anyone else. So it's incredibly hard, which is why I'm wanting to create a little bit more awareness about the very raw feelings involved with this illness, so that we can just create more compassion and more understanding about it. Because, of course, this is the other thing that's just so unfair, is that it's invisible. It's an invisible illness. So you're far more likely to get, all the sympathy and the empathy for a physical illness when you physically, or even if you've just broken your leg, you get, oh dear, poor you, and all these words of comfort, when you don't always get that with depression. And from my own experience as well, the depression made me incredibly irritable and incredibly aggressive, actually. So therefore, you make people really dislike you. The way that the illness makes you behave, you don't, no one really, it's very difficult, even for loved ones, even for your family, to want to actually give that compassion, because by the very nature of depression, you push people away. But all I can say is that, read up about it and just stick in there with that person that's suffering, and don't give up on them. Please don't give up on them, because we really need people's emotional support in order to get to overcome it, because it is just so debilitating. It really is. And I think, and the other thing, when I was in the midst of it, people would often say, oh, just go to the gym, go and do some exercise, as if it was the most simple thing in the world. And again, if you're suffering with depression severely enough, it's really, take it from me, it's not that simple. It feels as if you need superhuman strength just to get out of bed, let alone pumping weights in the gym. It's really not that simple. And yes, if you suffer with it mildly, yes, absolutely, you can, it's easy. Well, it's not easy, but go to the gym. Yes, that will absolutely make you feel better. Do as much sport as you possibly can. And that's where I'm at now. I do as much sport as I can to get the endorphins flooding my brain and, that feel-good factor. But when you are really depressed, it's not possible always to do that. If you can't motivate yourself enough to just have a normal conversation with your friends or to read a book, how on earth are you going to be able to leave the house to go and have a good workout in the gym? It's incredibly difficult. Not impossible, of course, but very, very difficult. So I think the other thing that I learned is that you mustn't fight the depression. I never forget going to the doctors, going to my GP, trying to get her to, she prescribed me some antidepressants. And I remember, furious I was that I felt like I'd been robbed with this depression. And having always been such a busy, proactive, ambitious person, this depression lark, quite frankly, didn't really sit very well with me. And I never forget saying to her, look, I don't have time to be depressed. And you could tell she was sort of trying to suppress a slight smile, because she actually said, well, with that attitude, you're never going to get better. And you know what? She was absolutely right. And one of the main things I learned was that you cannot fight the depression. You really have to just embrace and learn to accept your situation. And not punish yourself for being depressed. This is the other thing that's really important. As I'm sure any of you suffering now will be able to identify with, one of the other things that you get free with this awful illness is this overwhelming sense of guilt and shame for being depressed. So in other words, you get even more depressed and even more miserable and even more hateful and of yourself for feeling so miserable. You know, I can't think of any other illness that you know makes you makes you hate yourself even more for the fact that you're feeling that, the fact that you've got that illness. I mean, I'm sure there are many illnesses that make you feel like that, but I can't think of any at the moment. And again, as Ruby Wax once said it in the book, depression is like having the devil with Tourette's in your mind. You know, you're relentlessly tormented with these negative thought processes that just never give up. They never leave you alone. You know, everything you do, you've got this voice or several voices on at you, like a little woodpecker, just sort of pecking at your brain, saying, "Oh, you know, you're shit. You're, excuse my language, you know, you're no good. You're just awful. Just totally unworthy." And you feel an almighty sense of shame for the fact that you're suffering with depression, when really you should be giving yourself self-compassion, and other people should be, you know, giving you the most compassion and love and support. But sadly, it doesn't always work out like that. So again, I'm gonna sort of finish this off now, but I just, above all everything else, I want to emphasize the importance of just being patient with your friend or your loved one or whoever it is that you know is battling with depression, and don't give up on them, and keep trying to communicate, keep trying to ring them or just text them, because if they're anything like what I went through, they won't want to answer the phone. They'll be too frightened, too afraid. It'll be too much for them. So just send them a little text, send them a message, just saying, you know, I'm thinking of you. Yeah, because that's the other main symptom of depression, is that you do feel totally alienated. You do feel totally isolated and totally alone, and like no one understands, and that you're the only one that's going through it. But as I said in the beginning of this, the shocking statistics are that actually the majority of the population these days are suffering with some kind of anxiety or depressive disorder. So actually, I think it's safe to say that you're really not alone. Anyway, thank you very much for listening, and yeah, love to you all. Thank you.